This video is about my experience of going through the STA Award in Swimming Teaching course. I will walk you through all 5 days of the course. Things we covered, things I liked and I didn't like. The practical swimming teaching exercises, the assessment and much more. My name is Alan Chi. I learned to swim at the age of 32 and it changed my life. Since then, I'm on a mission to teach other people to swim and promote water safety around the world. As someone who wasn't a competitive swimmer myself, I was very much in doubt whether I would be able to complete this course. For example, I haven't really practiced much butterfly swimming, and therefore I was not sure whether this won't disqualify me from doing this job. During the course though, I met others from non-swimming backgrounds, which helped a lot. By the end, it turned out not to be a big problem at all, and I'll talk about this a little bit later in the video. But before I talk about first day of this course, I need to tell you why I chose this qualification rather than Swim England or Scottish Swimming qualifications. And here I'll have to make a little disclaimer. I do not work for STA or any other aquatics governing body. I am not getting paid to review this course, and everything I say here is my own personal experience, as well as an account of events that happened during that week. Now, there are 4 ways of getting a swimming teaching qualification in UK. Swim England, SEQ, Scottish Swimming, SSTQ, STA Award in Teaching Swimming, and STA Certificate in Swimming Teaching. There are other qualifications that you can go through, like working with babies, people with disabilities, or open water coaching. This is simply the first step to becoming a swimming teacher for me or anybody else who wants to do this job, and any additional skills and qualifications I will follow in future videos and my other qualification gaining journey. Depending on the choice of your qualification, its duration and location may vary. Swim England courses will of course be held in England. Scottish swimming courses are done locally around Scotland, and STA will have courses all over UK, but less frequently. From the information I gathered through my research before and after the course, I realized that those courses are very similar to each other, but they're not the same. Swim England qualification is the most popular and commonly encountered qualification around the UK. When it comes to Scottish swimming qualification, it's very similar with a couple of minor differences that you can read about on their website. I will link all those resources to those courses in the description of the video. Those two have 2 levels. You start off by completing level 1 by becoming an assistant, and then in order to fully independently teach adults and children, you have to achieve level 2. This course takes usually a few weeks to a couple of months and will be done commonly by leisure centers and public swimming pools within the city or town you live in. With STA, you go straight to level 2, so you don't have that part where you become the assistant at level 1. You go straight to level 2 and you can choose one of 2 courses. The STA Award, which allows you to train children and adults from non-swimmer to improver, and if you go for the STA Certificate course, after achieving it, you will be able to train from non-swimmer to all the way to advanced competitive swimming, diving, and so on. The STA courses are usually taught by tutors from private swimming schools and freelance swimming tutors. Try to say that 5 times quickly. And I chose that because it's much more condensed course that happens over a short period of time, and you don't have to wait too long to start teaching. I also decided to go with STA because I plan to use this qualification internationally, and STA is a internationally recognized body around the world in terms of swimming. So this qualification will allow me to either get a job or be recognized even if I was independently teaching in any country I go to. Technically, those swimming qualifications that you gain through Swim England or Scottish Swimming would still be recognized, but to translate them or make them work in certain countries might take a little bit more hassle. In my opinion, choosing STA will cause the least amount of friction in order to get going immediately. Also, because STA courses are done in a much shorter time span and the other ones take several weeks or months, I chose that because I have other commitments like my full-time job and other responsibilities. Therefore, for me, it was the most obvious choice. However, I did have to travel in order to attend my course. You see, those courses from Swim England and Scottish Swimming are done locally. The STA ones will happen less frequently and in places maybe a little bit harder to reach. So in my case, that was Clydesbank, which is just outside of Glasgow. It took me about 1.5 hours to 2 hours to get there from Edinburgh, and it cost about £30 for a train ticket to get there every single day. Let me quickly go through the sign-up process and everything that follows right after. First, you go to the STA website and you choose the desired qualification. In my case, that was the STA Award in Swimming Teaching. You pick your starting location, where you live, and the distance you are willing to travel to. As you can see, the earliest course doesn't start until April. So if I didn't see a course before that, I would extend the radius of my search to maybe find one that is a little bit further out from where I live, but instead happens earlier. However, it's a good idea to consider the course schedule and how far you're going to have to travel. Simply because if you're going to have to travel far and the course happens across several weekends rather than weekdays, one after another, you have to go back and forth. That will cost you a lot of money and you will have to waste a lot of time. So be strategic about your choice. In my case, that was 2 weekends, one after another. 3 days on the first weekend and 2 days on another weekend. So I had to make 5 trips outside of Glasgow and back to Edinburgh every single day. Obviously, the most amount of courses happens around London. So those who live in the south of UK definitely have a little bit of an advantage and are spoiled for choice. Now, the price of the course varies. It's usually somewhere around £400. I paid £395 for mine. And there are slight variances depending on the course provider. Technically, that's a little bit less than the full course from Swim England or Scottish Swimming. They can be around 600, but you have to account for the travel costs and the accommodation you might need. I did not need accommodation, but I had to spend about additional £200 for all the train tickets for me to get where I had to attend my course. Most of the listings that you will see on the website will have all the information you need. However, it could be a good idea to contact the swimming school or the provider directly because you might have additional questions, like I did. I needed to find out what's the difference between STA Award and STA Certificate and how they deal with people who are from non-swimming backgrounds. In the end, I made a phone call to my tutor and it turned out that she was able to address every single concern I had. I decided to make this video though, so you can have some idea before you try to make any contacts and reach out to those schools. Keep in mind that some of the details here might not be up to date. In my case, both of the phone numbers listed on the page were not working, and I had to first go to the website and then try to find another phone number to call again. And despite that, I still didn't manage to get through, and in the end had to email the school directly, which took longer to answer, and I'm not a big fan of talking via email. I prefer to speak on the phone. Once you get in touch with them, they should be able to provide you everything that you need, including all the documents that you need to fill in, the application form, or any other resources that you will need to support your journey to become a swimming teacher. In terms of payment, in my case, I had to make a bank transfer, and also you need to bear in mind that there will be an STA membership required in order to complete this course. At the time of the recording, the membership costs £49, and it includes additional resources that you will need as a teacher and public liability cover and insurance, which is worth that yearly membership fee. Once you fill that all in, when you sign up and make the payment, all you have to do is wait for the first day of your course. Depending on how far into the future you book, it might be several months of waiting. And for me, that was over 2 months wait, which made me both excited, impatient, but also anxious. I was quite nervous. I didn't know what to expect. This is why I decided to make this video. So in case if you do have to wait for 2 months, you can have something to calm your nerves and help you with that anticipation and give you a chance to prepare yourself before you get to the course. If you think that this video is providing you enough value so far, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so I can continue producing this type of content. Let's move on to the day number 1. STA Award in Swimming Teaching, day 1. I was there first to arrive, mainly because I had about 2 hours of journey to get there and I didn't want to be late, and because I hate being late, so I always arrive everywhere before everybody. Gradually, the room filled with people. There was 12 of us, and the age was varied from 16-year-olds all the way up to 40-something-year-olds. I was glad that I wasn't the only person in their 30s this time around. Everyone looked a little bit nervous, which is understandable. But our tutor made sure she put us at ease as soon as it was possible. She went through a brief introduction and asked us to tell a little bit about ourselves. She handed all the learning materials and proceeded to opening the first lesson. We had a choice of using either a printed manual or a digital one. I would recommend that you use a digital one in this case, despite my personal preference of having something tangible in your hands. Digital version is most up to date, and it's probably the smarter choice because STA tends to update their materials very often. I think it's around once a year, maybe more. And of course, if you have a printer version, after a year or 2 or 3 might be a little out of date. Our tutor gave us a brief info and overview about the venue and explained about what to expect in upcoming days. She also mentioned that it's a good idea to get into the water and start teaching kids as soon as possible, even the same day, so we can get this out of the way and not have to build it up in our head as something that is bigger than it needs to be. So of course, each one of us felt quite nervous because of that, but at the same time, I think that was a smart move on her behalf. Most of the theory consisted of a PDF presentation on a big screen and a tutor walking us through and talking about each concept in detail. We would have to take lots of notes and fill in something called a teaching portfolio. Each one of us would have to deliver a fully complete and revised portfolio to sign off at the end. Now, this is a very intense course, and the volume of information can seem like a lot. Be prepared to work hard and sacrifice quite a few extra hours during the week for some homework and study outside of the regular course hours. From time to time, we would have to switch things up and work through the information and the learning in groups. Now that was quite helpful. It would help to break the ice and get to know each other. So in the end, we could help each other in the swimming pool or any other exercises. In this job, collaboration is key. Keep in mind that each tutor and course provider may have a different approach or style in their teaching. What I'm showing you here is just what I went through and to give you an idea of what to expect. Don't take it as a gospel though, because your course schedule or style or methods might be slightly different. We started out the theory part with safeguarding. It's not the most exciting part of swimming teaching, but very important. It's all about protecting children and vulnerable adults. It covers the role of a teacher, the qualities of a good teacher, and what are our responsibilities. We learned how to spot signs of neglect or abuse and what legislation or guidance to follow in case we encounter those on our journey. We talked about different types of swimmers and the relationship that swimming teachers build with the participants. We discussed how to safely enter the water, the teaching ratios of how many participants, how many learners a teacher can have when it's by themselves, water confidence, overcoming fear, and much more. Our tutor also gave us an idea of what to expect in the assessment quite early on, so we don't have to be kept in somewhat of uncertainty. I'll talk about this later on in this video. One of the things that stood out for me in this particular course is that our tutor answered all of our questions as quickly as they were raised to release that tension and get us settled and less stressed as we went along. She also preemptively reassured us that we don't have to stress about teaching butterfly, because rather than teaching it to kids, we will be teaching it to each other. Around midday, we would go to the swimming pool for the first time and get our first shot at swimming classes. As this was a full-time swimming school, we would actually be working with existing paying customers of the school. The class timetable was clearly displayed and visible for everyone to see, and it consisted of names of our students, the teachers we would be assisting, and the group ability that we will be working with. At this stage, I must say that I became aware how important it is to become flexible with frequent schedule changes, not only through the course, but also throughout your entire swimming teaching career. It seems that last-minute schedule changes, no-shows, class covers, and substitutions are commonplace and unavoidable. Parents and their kids get sick, teachers too. And with any other additional and unpredictable factors, if you add injuries, accidents, and things like that, there is an absolute chaos to be expected within a swimming school. This can cause anxiety and add to what is already a stressful experience of going outside of your comfort zone and learning throughout the course. But my philosophy is, if you can get through your work in such difficult environment, it helps you build confidence and a stronger character for years to come. The regular kids swimming class duration is 30 minutes. 5 minutes of warm-up, usually games-based activity. Then 20 minutes of main theme, usually practice of a swimming stroke. And 5 minutes of contrasting activity, usually something fun to finish the lesson on a high. During my first class, I was an assistant to another swimming teacher. It was a class of 3 beginner level learners. I observed her interaction and teaching style and asked a ton of questions. She also introduced me to the kids, so I also didn't have to stand there like a scarecrow for them. After the lesson, we got changed, went back up to the classroom for lunch, during which we discussed our experience between each other. After lunch, we went through the whole portfolio and presentation all the way up until 7 p.m. The first day was quite long and intense, but what I can say is that by that stage, all the nerves were pretty much gone. And although tired, we were already excited about what's to come for the next day. On the second day, we learned how to plan and execute exercises using foam noodles and flotation devices. We learned about essential movement skills and essential swimming skills. We touched on what is a teaching practice and a teaching point. We prepared a mock-up lesson plan for teaching participants of a varying ability level. We learned how to take a participant from a maximum support to minimum and then no support in the swimming pool. Anything from holding a wall using flotation aids to teacher support to independent swimming. We discussed techniques and strategies of managing behavior of children and introducing rules to the classes. We talked about grouping learners. This was the first time I learned about prone on the front or supine on the back position. And I heard of something called BLOPT, which is an acronym for the order you teach swimming, like body position, legs, arms, breathing, and timing. On day 2, I got to practice my first swimming class with an assistant beside me. My group consisted of 3 non-swimmers, and I had to teach them water confidence and front paddle. Throughout the course, you'll learn that the best approach to teaching is using the games-based approach, and the kids learn this way the fastest. So for the warm-up, I chose a game that is commonly known in the kids' world called red light, green light. And I gave each one of them a foam noodle and allowed them to explore a little bit of the swimming pool, floating a little bit in that manner. Every time I said green light, they would move, and every time I said red light, they would stop. That also gave me a way to judge their ability level, because of course I've never met these kids before and I had to figure out how confident in the water they actually are. For the main theme, I chose to practice a star float on the front and on the back. And I quickly realized that every kid may be at a different ability level within the swimming level, and I will have to be very flexible and think on my feet very quickly to adjust to the situation. One kid, for example, was extremely comfortable in practicing the star float, and he would pretty much fearlessly try anything. The second kid was much more fearful and probably practicing a star float without any additional support would be too much. The third kid, a little girl, flat out refused to work with me. I think she might have been scared of this bald guy showing up out of nowhere and becoming their swimming teacher for the day. Fortunately, my assistant was already familiar with this child, and she took her away for a few minutes so I could work on the lesson with the 2 other boys in the group. For the contrasting activity, I chose front paddle, where they had to try to move their arms and kick their legs for the first time with the foam noodles still under their bellies, so they have support and don't have to be overly stressed when getting outside their comfort zone. After we finished, we went back to the classroom to learn all about the swimming strokes. We spent the next few hours going through every single swimming stroke and analyzing its teaching practices and teaching points. We watched several videos illustrating a perfect swimming form and discussed best practices to achieve it. There was also a part of the session where we would all have to stand up and practice demonstrating each stroke on dry land to each other to show that it isn't as easy as you might think to convey all that information and technique to someone else. Once we knew how and what we'll be teaching, we were to prepare something called a scheme of work, which was basically a plan for 10 weeks of teaching, a broad idea of what each week of teaching would consist of. That had to be done for each swimming ability level, from non-swimmers, beginners to improvers and advanced. And probably my least favorite part of the course, and probably my job in the future. I absolutely despise filling paperwork and doing this kind of repetitive and boring tasks, but I guess it comes with the territory. On day 3, we started in the pool early. I had a group of improvers which we planned to work on a breaststroke with. I was slightly nervous, but not as much as you might imagine. I was already starting to get more comfortable with the idea of teaching. I learned to really enjoy the time in the swimming pool with kids and realized that I am in the right place and in the right moment of my life. And to be fair, the swimming pool portion of the course ended up being my favorite time overall. For this group, as a warm-up, I came up with an interesting game-based activity, which I called water baseball. It was something that I haven't seen anybody else do, and even my tutor was in doubt whether this would work. Basically, this was a game I learned during my time on a football training pitch. And how it works is that you take each player and place them in around somewhat of a circle in different spots, call them bases, and you start the game with one player holding a ball. The purpose of the game is to pass the ball to another player at another base and follow the ball by swimming up to that base. Once that person catches the ball, they throw it to another base and they go away whilst the first person stays. And as the kids got hang of it, they started playing and throwing and swimming much faster and started going in sometimes a circle, but sometimes other directions. If you do it well, it's quite fun and challenging and speedy game. And because the differences varied, I also made sure the stronger kids would be having to swim further distances and the smaller and less strong kids would be closer to me. I was within the circle, so always able to catch if somebody needed support, but they seemed to all enjoy it and it really worked. The crazy part was that I took some risk by trying this game with the kids without really knowing if it's going to work out. And in the end, my tutor was pretty impressed and I saw everybody else in the swimming pool was nodding their head in admiration that we managed to pull this off. For the main theme, we were developing the breaststroke kick, using a kickboard on the back and on the front of the body. For the contrasting activity, we did superhero jumps, which is a lot of fun for the kids. Afterwards, I heard from more than one person that this was the most fun swimming lesson they ever had. I could see the enthusiasm on the kids' faces when we were high-fiving each other. And a couple of parents walked up to me saying thank you with a big smile on their face. At that stage, I felt incredible. And in that moment, I decided that my reputation as a swimming teacher will be to be the fun one. Every teacher has their reputation, a strict one, a loud one, a silly one. I want to be a swimming teacher that is fun for all my pupils. And that also applies to adults. I want to make sure that anytime I teach adults, they will also have lots of fun. After the class, my tutor pulled me aside for a little debrief. I spoke about the things I've done right and things that maybe I could have improved. That was a really good thing to do because right on the spot I was able to tell her what I could have done differently and have her immediate feedback to what could be done well, what I actually have done well, or what I could have improved. I've got some good praise and I felt really good about myself. Then we went back to the classroom for some more theory learning. We talked about teaching different age groups and how children change along the years. We talked about changing lessons according to seasons of the year and during themed classes. We talked about health and safety and hazards in the swimming pool, something to expect, like in an emergency, so we can operate with confidence. We learned about the different temperatures you can teach swimming in and what water temperature you should not be swimming in at all. We also learned about the barriers of communication, the relationship of teachers with parents, the importance of giving valuable feedback both to the learner but also to the parent. We finished that day much earlier than expected, but we still had a lot of homework to do for the week. For those who had the printed portfolios, they would have to fill them in right then and there, because when they hand them to the tutor, they won't see the mistakes they made until the next week when they would be able to fix them. Instead, for those who had a digital portfolio, they had an opportunity to send the document back and forth between themselves and the tutor so they could fix and revise all their mistakes along the week. By the time the next weekend arrived, they would have their portfolio pretty much finished. I chose the digital one because I wanted to have extra time for learning and getting my answers right throughout the weekend because I have a regular job that I wanted to attend.
1 week later.
After a week of break, we returned to the classes on a Saturday for another day of learning. This time, we had 2 classes each planned for the day, plus a butterfly lesson. My first group was non-swimmers, which I will be teaching front paddle, and the second group would be non-swimmers who need to learn back paddle. Those classes were relatively smooth for me and I didn't have any problems. I felt confident and I knew what I was doing, despite the fact that I had a couple of very fearful children within my classes. And what I can tell you is that there is nothing else I can compare it to when you have a child who is absolutely petrified of water, even just getting in or putting their face in it. And then you help them throughout the 30 minutes to change from that to being able to flap about in the water, get on a foam noodle, and swim with you along the water or even jump to it. This is something you cannot put a price on. It's extremely rewarding, and seeing the parents smile in gratitude is something I cannot explain. After we finished both of our classes, we had to stay in the pool for a lesson evaluation and observe others taking notes and filling in our portfolios, what we think went well and what didn't, and answer all the questions within that page. After everyone was finished, we gathered around in the swimming pool for a butterfly lesson. Make sure you bring your swimming goggles for the day because it will help to swim with less hassle. As we were standing in the water, our tutor showed us all the teaching practices and points to butterfly. We then tried them all by breaking the stroke apart to kick and the arms, the breathing and the timing. And eventually we got a chance to teach it to each other. Some people were already quite confident in swimming butterfly, so they found it extremely easy, where others maybe not. I was somewhat in between. Butterfly is not something unfamiliar for me, but I was still needing some good information to improve it. The reason why we had to do it on each other is to experience what kind of effort goes into swimming butterfly. And then you can adjust your expectations and your planning for the learners that you're going to be working with, especially little kids. Butterfly is really demanding on the body and it will take a long time to master. Afterwards, we went back to the classroom and learned about how to plan for the unexpected, give proper feedback, set smart goals, and evaluate the learners. We also touched on the science of swimming, specifically hydrostatics, the science of buoyancy and gravity, as well as hydrodynamics, the study of propulsion and resistance. At the end of the day on Saturday, day 4, we were prepared and told of what to expect on the final assessment day. What scores we should be getting in order to pass the final test, and what requirements we have to fill in order to pass the practical swimming teaching assessment. We would also have to check our portfolios for final revisions before we submit them for signing off. Once all that was done, we were free before the end of the day to come back home early and prepare mentally for the final day. As you might imagine, despite the fact that I had a good course overall, I was still feeling nervous. As usual, I did not bring anything to eat with me because when I'm nervous, I simply lose my appetite and I cannot eat. Although we met at 10 a.m., the assessment itself didn't start until 12. We had 2 hours to either do some final revisions, study a little bit more, or go to the swimming pool for a practice run of the assessment. I chose to stay in the classroom and learn a little bit more, study, read a little bit more, so I don't fail the theory test, because I didn't want to embarrass myself by doing everything well in the pool and then not passing the theory. Just before 12, the outside assessor from STA has arrived and introduced herself. She came up with the tests and handed them over to us, which all consisted of 4 different units. In Unit 1, you had to score 12 out of 16. In Unit 2, you had to score 7 out of 9. In Unit 3, 8 out of 9. And in Unit 4, 8 out of 11. Now bear in mind that this can change because, as I mentioned before, STA likes to change things around, and maybe in the future the required assessment points threshold will be different. This is just to give you an idea of what is expected right now from you so you can pass the test. For the practical assessment in the pool, we will still be teaching existing customers of the swimming school, but those were receiving bonus lessons and they would be the only kids in the swimming pool. Therefore, the classes during the day were a little bit more laid back and the parents were fully aware that this is a test. I prepared a very specific warm-up plan and a main theme activity for my group, which then I had to change, simply because the group I was with was also practicing exactly the same thing with a person before me. Because of that, I realized that if I do the same lesson plan, the kids will be bored and it won't be fun for them, which I did not want. So I had to change my plan last minute. Now, when I observed those kids, I realized that they're actually higher level and more comfortable in the water than I thought. So instead of teaching them front paddle, I will be doing a stroke development for front crawl instead. The kids seemed to appreciate it very much, and we were doing very well. I went through all the required steps of the assessment to the T. I demonstrated the stroke from 2 different angles. I taught it through a wide range of teaching practices and teaching points. I made sure everybody had lots of fun and received lots of praise. I gave them good, constructive feedback that they could use to practice and get better for the next time. We finished with some pencil jumps to make sure they are finishing their classes on a high note with a big smile and happy. After I got out from the water, the assessor pulled me aside and asked me what I think I did well and what I didn't think went so well. I think this was some sort of a self-evaluation opportunity to make sure, even if I made mistakes, at least I'm aware of them and they will help me to get a better score. In the end, I was pretty happy with myself, but I wouldn't know the final result until a little bit later when everybody was done. Now, some of us didn't have such smooth lessons with their groups. And for their assessment, they ended up with much more challenging children. You have to keep in mind that little children are very unpredictable and lots of unexpected things can happen. What the assessor is looking for is your ability to keep them safe. They are not there to fail you. They are there to see whether you can follow the STA teaching curriculum whilst making sure everybody is safe. If you make mistakes, you're not fully disqualified. And as long as you know what needs improved and you ensured full safety of your learners, you won't fail this course. There is no such thing as perfect lesson, but with time, we'll gain much more confidence and make them much better. After everybody has finished, we had to wait outside of the classroom for the final verdict. In the end, we have all passed, and we were congratulated both by the assessor and our tutor. We were each handed a provisional certificate to use in case we wanted to start a teaching job right away. However, we would all receive a PDF that we could later on print within the next 28 working days, which I did, as you can see, and I keep it proudly framed in my room alongside my lifeguarding certificate to prove to myself and everyone that anything is possible if you put your mind to it. This course has been a very enjoyable and an eye-opening experience. It made me realize that we are all capable of so much more than we think. And although I want to focus on teaching adults, I will certainly be working with kids in the water at some stage in the future. The empathy I have for those fearful children and the joy that I see in their eyes after they overcome their fear of water is something I cannot forget. And I didn't realize it's going to affect me so deeply. So if you, like me, were not sure whether you could teach swimming or work with kids, maybe this video will change your mind. Let me know in the comments if it did.